We're good? Okay. All right. David and Bathsheba. Here, folks, reactions to these three chapters. What do you think of this? Just generally, then I have some specific questions. Anyone?
Don't call on me because I didn't do my homework.
Oh, okay.
I'm not prepared.
All right, then, if there's no general reaction, how do you? Go.
Well, so, sorry, I like this story because I think it reflects like common humanity, human experience. God ends up being like forgiving in the end with Solomon.
The end of well,
Yeah, I think so, unless I read it.
If there's no other commentary, or comments, let me ask you a question. When David lays with Bathsheba the first time, was it consensual on her part? What I'm saying? He was married. He was a married woman. He was the king. There was a huge disparity in authority and power between them. Could she have said no if she wanted? Maybe not. And then another way of looking at it is it could go both ways. Maybe it was consensual. Her husband was away at war, when David and Bishop lived. And maybe she was just very lonely. Maybe she was greatly flattered by the fact that the king was attracted to me. On the other hand, chapter 11, verse 26, we're told that when Bathsheba learns that Uriah has died, has been killed, she, in one version I read, quote, made lamentation over her husband, or in another translation, she lamented over her husband. And there could be an inference there that she had not wanted David's attention, that she was quite attached to her husband. In any event, I think you have to wonder whether she was raped or not. Okay. Next question. How do we know from the story that's told in chapters 11 and 12 that David is the father of Bathsheba's child? Anyone got a shot here? So, right after 2 Samuel 11:4, where is that? 4. It says that David lay with her, and it adds, she was purifying herself from her uncleanliness. Another interpretation, translation, makes it slightly more modern. She had just purified herself after her period. Why would they put that in this story? To make sure that everyone knows that the child is David's child, not Uriah's child. Okay. I think there's a conspiracy going in this story. I think it's page 2. Joab, the commander of the Israelite army, he knows that David wants Uriah killed. He doesn't appear to know why David wants Uriah killed. But he puts Uriah up front in the attack that comes quite soon thereafter, in a place where Uriah is most likely to be killed, as David has asked happen. He wants that to happen. So he's at least a partial conspirator, although he doesn't know why David wants Uriah killed. Next question is, does Bathsheba know that David arranged for her husband to die in battle? The text doesn't suggest that she does. So if there is a conspiracy to kill her husband, she's not. Another question. Why does David tell Uriah, David calls Uriah back from the battlefield, and he tells Uriah to go to Uriah's house? Why does he tell him to do that? Why is he being so nice to this guy? Is he being nice to this guy?
He wants them to sleep together.
Yeah, right. So that
Uriah could claim Bathsheba's child.
it would cover up the fact that Bathsheba's child is David's child. That's exactly right. Okay. Now, I think it's already evident that David is portrayed in this story as a really rotten guy. And the contrast with Uriah is just so stark. Uriah is such a faithful soldier that he won't go home to his wife while his comrades are still fighting the battle out on the battlefield. He sleeps on the ground instead, just as his fellow soldiers do. That's what he says he wants to do, and that's what he does. David goes even further. He's desperate to get Uriah home to Bathsheba to cover up the source of the pregnancy. So he gets Uriah drunk in the hope that Uriah will go home and sleep with his wife. This makes David, who actually did sleep with Uriah, look so bad in contrast. So the storytelling gives us a really rotten David and a really virtuous Uriah, who David has killed. Essentially, David comes off really bad in this. Anything else anyone wants to say about this? Because I thought this would take up a lot more time.
There's elements of soap opera to it, that's for sure.
Well, that's very good. My question is this a soap opera or is it a crime drama? It could be both. The other thing that Brett Scott said we could do tonight was go back and consider anything we wanted to consider or say in the previous 3 classes. Wanted to say, consider or discuss. Anybody have any thoughts on what has come before? Anything I wanted to say, maybe you didn't get to say?
This is Sil. I have one thought. And if you can't hear me, the
No, we can hear
connection's
you.
kind of dodgy. Okay. This, on top of all of the other passages we were reading, really does highlight the fact that men were horn dogs, absolute horn dogs. There were all sorts of admonitions against how often and whom, and the women and the men, and prohibitions from overdoing, over having sex too much. And this is another example of how rampant that must have been.
You're right. Why would they even have these prohibitions unless they figured there was something they had to prohibit?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. But what I wanted to go back and consider was the Song of Songs, and how on earth would that get in the Bible?
Oh, that's that one, the piece.
Pardon? Yeah.
That piece, yeah, I don't know,
You got something?
no.
Oh, okay.
I'll say a piece.
Song of Songs
I'm
got
sorry,
into,
David. What was your question, David?
The Song of Songs make it into the Bible.
Oh,
Yeah.
Why was it chosen? It seems an unlikely choice to go into a holy book. It's,
a holy book for human beings.
well, yeah, I think you're being sarcastic, and I get the sarcasm there.
No, I'm not being particularly sarcastic. Sex is a necessary part of the human experience. Otherwise, why would Yahweh have even made it possible?
I should rephrase my question. How did it
That
get?
how did that particular one get in?
No, no, no. Rephrasing the question, how did it come to be interpreted as it was subsequently interpreted, which was as a poem about, an extended poem about the relationship between God and humankind, which is how it has generally been interpreted.
I suspect there that you're dealing with people who followed Paul's strictures that the best Christians were celibate and didn't have a jackass idea of what was important about sex. So they only had the written word, not the experience.
But the Song of Songs is about sex.
Largely.
Yeah, very largely.
well, I have this theory, and I would love to bounce it off of everyone in the room and on the call, especially you, Foxy. I have this notion of right around the time that this was put down in parchment, the whole series of laws around chastity and celibacy were being created. And the one thing, rather than saying they were celibate because they had no sex, I am wondering and have a strong suspicion that they would only have the sacred union. And any sex outside of it being viewed as a sacred union was what they needed to refrain from. And that the Song of Solomon clearly talks about things that are just, very lovely, very sexual, and very, I would say, more whole than other parts of the Bible might be.
How did it come to be interpreted, though, as as dealing with the relationship between God and human beings?
My suspicion is it had to do with Tertullian, who I think really had it in for, I think he really did despise women. And
Oh,
a lot of baggage around that. So that would have been in Tertullian would have been in what, the
okay.
3rd century,
Yeah, something
and
like
he
that.
was one of the interpreters and people who, that one of the spin doctors. I think it was he who reframed Paul's notion about women to his advantage.
Maybe, maybe it
Taking
made.
it which So you're taking it which way? More misogynistically or less?
Oh yeah, a Tertullian would have made it more misogynistic.
Okay. Just I'm not familiar with him.
Way before that,
Yeah,
though,
he was one of the early church fathers. Go ahead.
way before Tertullian, the Song of Songs was in the Hebrew Bible.
Hmm. Still
Why?
is.
Yeah.
Right. and it has been for 2,500, 3,000 years. Why? Why did they put it in the Bible?
My thought on that is it's its own parable.
Well, yeah, it is.
You know, if you stop and consider what most of the references are when they're discussing a woman, their nature. You look around at the beauty of the world and you appreciate God for it. But it's couched in terms that are far easier for most human beings to understand. And it goes back to the creation story. If you change the word in the traditional Christian creation story from days to eons, which, let's face it, no shepherd would ever understand, because most of us can't wrap our head around an eon, it's the same story. It's just been phrased in a way that was comprehensible. And I suspect that Song of Solomon was that type of parable. It was pointing out what values there are, what beauty there is in the world, and praising God for it. But that's a supposition. That's not a scholarly treatise.
Okay, this is why I asked you the question. This poem doesn't address central theological and historical themes that appear in the rest of the Bible. I think it's the only book in the Bible that doesn't mention God. I think I'm right about that. And from what I've read, at least one very prominent scholar, a guy named what was his name? James Kugel. It says that the most satisfactory theory of the book's original genre and function is that it is a collection of poems about human love. It's about human love originally, nothing more than that. But according to modern scholars, its words originally, and according to modern scholars, its words originally had nothing to do with God. So how did it get into the Bible? It's not about God. Was it originally? How did it come to be seen as being something about God? Ancient scholars, according to Kugel, in the late biblical period, had a very God-centered approach to interpretation of Scripture, much more so than subsequent. And their own relationship to God was very deeply felt, was profound. And what they probably wanted and they needed to express in their love of God and God's love for them, they needed to express that mutual love in the deepest, most powerful way that they knew. The song is highly metaphorical. So if your understanding of the world and of life is powerfully God-centered, you might look at the song's metaphors, similes, and double entendres, the yearnings, consummations, and as being the yearnings, the consummations, and frustrations of a love that joins you with the divine. That may be how it got into the Bible. I can imagine these ancient scholars reading the Song of Songs and saying with tremendous enthusiasm, yep, that's it. This is how my soul feels in the presence of God. This is it. And from there, going on to see it in something more profound than a love poem between a man and a woman. the ancient scholars probably may have at least needed to express their deeply loving relationship with divinity in a romantic manner. And even today, there are maybe people who feel that same need. The second possible answer, this comes from this guy, Google. The understanding of a text or of anything else can change with events. And he gives this wonderful example. If on September 10th, 2000, you looked at a photograph of the Twin Towers, the World Trade Center, what would it mean to you? It would mean something maybe like, oh, this is incredible engineering. You know, it's so big, it speaks so much of the power of a great nation. But if you saw the same photo on the morning of September 12th, 2001, that photo would have a very different meaning for you. It would speak of the vulnerability even of a great nation and of how a terrible thing could happen in a single day and how so many people could be killed in a couple of hours, right in the most powerful city of the most powerful nation in the world. So possibly, Kugel speculates, something momentous, something akin to the disruption of the World Trade Center happened between when the Song of Songs was written and known as nothing more than a very good love poem. And later, when it came to be seen as an extended metaphor of love between humankind and God, there was something that happened, perhaps, that changed people's perceptions. Just as our perceptions of the picture of the old World Trade Center have been changed by what happened on September 11th, 2001. Oh, what time is it?
7:25.
You know, we got an hour and 5 minutes to go here.
Yes. Teachers can always let us out early.
You can always, regardless of the teacher, you can always leave early. Okay. I'm sorry, I thought that this would go much longer than it has. God, 3 times longer.
According to Quora, God is not mentioned in the Song of Songs because the book is an allegory of the love between God and the Jewish people.
It's, yeah. So why wouldn't God be mentioned then?
Because it's an allegory.
Oh, okay, because it's emphasizing allegory rather than
Yes.
it's a statement of fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I still have to believe that part of the reason has to be acknowledging the importance of love, be it philos, sophia, or agape, to
Okay.
humanity.
That sounds good. Yeah, it's a way, an allegorical way of saying love is vital, love is important.
Love is important, and there's this whole
Oh,
every one of these is referring back to the beauty of the world around us. Every one of these is putting heartfelt thought into pleasing on some level your partner or your want to be partner.
yeah, yeah, I like that.
And I mean, I knew people who had sex for procreation alone. They were not generally happy people.
I know too well.
Yes, Otter knows them extremely well.
Okay.
You know,
So-
on the other hand, my parents, who bless their souls, lived to be 87 and 93, were still sexually active right up until 3 days before my mother died at 87.
And you know, tell something. You wanna tell them how you
I-
know this?
Yeah, well, I wasn't gonna ask her that.
Because there was more than one time when I called mom or dad to talk to them about something, and I would get, did I interrupt something? Yes, call you later. Click. It's disturbing when your mother's getting more when you're 54 than you are.
Thank you for that contribution.
You know, I mean, those are not quite the extremes, because you could still have the people that are celibate and the nymphomaniacs on the other end, but I'm not sure that either one of those are healthy ways. The mom and dads, my mom and dads, and Otter's mom and dads may probably should be considered healthy on to some degree, but in my parents' case, let me back up a second. I was raised by two of the most Christian people I've ever encountered. And I'm not throwing that word around lightly. Dad was a Gospelian preacher. He was superintendent of Sunday school. Mom held every office a woman could hold in the church except organist. Went to sleep in church, at church, more often the first 7 years of my life than I did in my own bed, because at least 4 nights a week they had commission meetings or something to do at church. So I would go and I'd get dossed out on the preacher's couch. That never changed. Until they were incapable of driving themselves to church, they went to church every Sunday. And it wasn't because they felt they had to. It's because they chose to. When my dad was making $90 a week after having made $250,000 3 years before, and I was putting food on the table at 15, the church still got $9. That $9 was probably more than my portion of the food budget. That's how seriously they took their religion.
It sounds to me like that benefited them greatly.
It did. It did. Their faith is also the reason that Dad had back surgery when he was the seventh person they ever did this particular surgery on, was told that he had a 5% chance of ever standing on his own 2 feet again. And the morning after surgery, they couldn't find him because he was 150 feet down the hall, looking out a window
Good for him.
without a wheelchair.
That's terrific. And you attribute that in some way to his faith?
Yeah, I absolutely attribute it to his faith. When he was going into the operating room, he told the surgeon, "I will be in church on Easter Sunday." And by God, he was.
That's a good story.
It's a wonderful story.
Yeah.
So I was raised by some people who lived as Christ-like a life as they could.
Very good.
And they benefited in many ways from it. My divorce from their church had to do with a illegitimate pastor, stinking thief. But I still see them both as, you know, diametrically opposed approaches to what God granted us. The ability to have that kind of a loving relationship, whether it's carnal or not. And how do you take that completely out of a Bible? How do you take that out of the relationship between humanity and the Creator?
Okay, good. So you're coming back now to answer the question.
Yeah.
the Song of Songs in the Hebrew Bible. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's very good. I like that.
thank you.
Thanks, Foxy.
I didn't even realize you were there at first. Not even your hair was showing.
Yeah, I know. It's just
No, not yours, hers.
Oh. Well, she has almost enough hair to make up for the fact that I have so little.
Yeah, we could always glue it on. Did you have curly hair?
I don't think I would look too good. Anything else, anybody talk about sexuality in the Bible, anything that, questions you might have had, or you can just open up the discussion other than that particular topic.
One of the things that has irked me for decades is the religious right, and spell that any of three different ways, insisting that homosexuality was a huge no-no.
Yeah, we have a friend of ours who was like that. You know, very well.
When in fact, as long as you contributed to the bloodlines, nobody cared.
Yeah, it's
You know, it was go forth and be fruitful and multiply. I mean, you couldn't not contribute, you'd get in trouble. The priests would be on your back. And given how many surrounding cultures saw absolutely nothing amiss with homosexuality, either gay or lesbian, why and where are they getting this from? I mean, granted, I grant you there is a passage, but there are so many others that virtually negate it.
something that Rev Scott sent around and I think mentioned when we discussed same-sex relations in the Bible. Referred back to the 1970s when the political right and right of center had considerable success, electoral success, by pushing against homosexuality. And just stuck with it ever since. But that, of course, begs the question of the why, as to why they would have such success with that issue. What was it about the American public that predisposed them to accept that kind of condemnation of same-sex relationships?
We were growing out of our racism, so they needed a new target.
You needed something else. That's good. But you're assuming, I guess it's not a justified assumption that there's some need to be prejudiced against something.
Well, if you're trying to make wholesale changes to the government, which the religious right does, then you definitely want to distract people with some other than the one they're accustomed to othering, so that you can go quietly about your way and start making this is a Christian nation bullshit. I mean, it really isn't any different than what's going on right now. The tariff thing is to hide the fact that in less than 3 weeks, we may be under martial law.
Well, I'm not going to ask what makes you think that. Maybe we'll get together and discuss it at another time, but
I'm just saying
the Bible is.
it's the same disconnect between what the real plan is and how you proceed to make it happen while nobody's looking.
Mhm. Yeah.
One of my housemates saw a t-shirt yesterday and it had a picture of Washington crossing the Delaware, except that it had Trump's face on it. And another one of my housemates said, well, that would be hiding in plain sight.
Okay, we're a bit removed from Bible here.
A bit removed from Bible, but
If possible.
Sorry, I
Sure.
came in so very, very late, but I read Reb Scott's email today, and he said we were gonna read Solomon 2. Chapter 11 and 12.
No, Samuel, 2 Samuel.
What?
Second Samuel.
Oh, Samuel. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. So you started with that and I missed that part. So I couldn't figure out why we were on the Song of Solomon, so. No.
Yeah. Did I inappropriately say Song of Solomon when I should have been talking about 2 Samuel 11?
No, I have it marked as Samuel.
Right, 2
Yeah.
Samuel, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Right, okay. Do we want to read it?
Why not?
Okay.
Are we done with this?
We're going to read it. Maybe some of, maybe we can.
Did you already read it?
No.
Yeah.
No, not here.
We can read it together soon. No. You can do that.
All right, look, I'll start. We're, 2 Samuel, chapter 11.
Chapter 11?
Yeah. Did you get the message that that's what we were supposed to read?
No, I just searched in the trash for it. I didn't get the message.
Oh, okay. Did everyone else?
I got it. No, I got it.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you get it?
Yeah, I don't know.
So I wasn't imagining it.
Yeah,
This is.
that's a good reason to read it.
Oh, okay. And maybe what I said earlier will make some
So Samuel,
better sense.
Yes.
Samuel 2.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chapter
2
11.
Samuel.
What's the
Chapter 11.
At the turn of the year, the season when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab with the officers and all Israel with him, and they devastated Ammon and besieged Rabbah. David remained in Jerusalem. Late one afternoon, David rose from his couch and strolled on the roof of the royal palace, and from the roof he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and the king sent someone to make inquiries about the woman. He reported, she is Bathsheba, daughter of Eliab and wife of Uriah the Hittite. David sent messengers to fetch her. She came to him and he lay with her. She had just purified herself after her period, and she went back home. The woman conceived, and she sent word to David, I am pregnant. Thereupon David sent a message to Joab, sent Uriah the Hittite to me, and Joab sent Uriah to David. You want to go next? Kevin?
Sure. When Uriah came to him, David asked how Joab and the people fared and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, go down to your house and wash your feet. Uriah went out to the king's house, and there followed him a present from the king. But Uriah slept at the entrance of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and did not go down to his house. When they told David, Uriah did not go down to his house. David said to Uriah, You had just come from a journey. Why did you not go down to the house? Uriah said to David, the ark and Israel and Judah, they remain in booths. And my lord Job and the servants of my lord are camping in the open field. Shall I then go to my house to eat and drink and to lie with my wife? As you live, as your soul lives, I will not do such a thing. Then David said to Uriah, remain here today also, and tomorrow I will send you back. So Uriah remained in Jerusalem and that day. The next day, David invited him back to eat and drink in his presence and made him drunk. And in the evening, he went out to lie on the couch with the servants of his lord, but he did not go down to his house.
And Uriah's a really good guy. David's a really jerk.
Yeah, I see that.
Deb, can you show me where we are? Sure. The first time I'm using this.
Samuel. Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
It's good.
Okay, I think we're at
Yeah.
verse 14.
14, yeah.
Okay,
Verse 14.
In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it, he wrote, put Uriah in the front line where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him, so he will be struck down and die. So while Joab had the city under siege, he put Uriah at the place where he knew the strongest defenders were. When the men of the city came out and fought against Joab, some of the men in David's army fell. Moreover, Uriah the Hittite died. Joab sent David a full account of the battle. He instructed the messenger, when you have finished giving the king this account of the battle, the king's anger may flare up, and he may ask you, why did you get so close to the city to fight? Didn't you know they would shoot arrows from the wall? Who killed Abimelech, son of Besheth? Didn't a woman throw an upper millstone on him from the wall so that he died in Thebez? Why did you get so close to the wall? If he asks you this, then say to him, also your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead.
And this suggests that Joab really doesn't pretty much show, Joab doesn't know why David wanted Uriah to die. Okay. And he would, therefore, he was not fully part of the conspiracy. Jeff, you want to go?
I'm still having difficulty finding.
I found it, let's see what we're reading now.
It's verse 22, chapter 11, verse 22.
So the messenger went, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So the messenger went and came and told David all that Joab had sent him to tell. The messenger said to David, the men gained an advantage over us and came out against us in the field, but we drove them back to the entrance of the gate. Then the archers shot at your servants from the walls. Some of the king's servants are dead, and your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. David said to the messenger, thus you shall say to Joab, do not let this matter trouble you, for the sword devours now one, and now another. Press your attack on the city and overthrow it, and encourage him. Should I go on?
Yeah, go through to chapter 12, first verse.
Okay, when the wife of Uriah heard that her husband was dead, she made lamentations for him. When the mourning was over, David sent and brought her to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son.
David is, making worse of himself.
Mhm.
Who wants to go next?
I'll read.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord, and the Lord sent Nathan to David. He came to him and said to him, there were two men in a certain city, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had very many flocks and herds. But the poor man had nothing but one little ewe lamb, which he had bought. He brought it up, and it grew up with him and with his children. It used to eat of his meager fare and drink from his cup and lie in his bosom. And it was like a daughter to him. Now there came a traveler to the rich man, and he loathed to take one of his flock or herd to prepare for the wayfarer who had come to him. But he took the poor man's lamb and prepared that for the guest who had come to him. Then David's anger was greatly kindled against the man. He said to Nathan, as the Lord lives, the man who has done this deserves to die. He shall restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing and because he had no pity. Shall I read further?
Yeah.
Nathan said to him, you are the man. Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel. I appoint you king over Israel, and I rescued you from the hand of Saul. I gave you your master's house and your master's wives into your bosom, and gave you the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that had been too little, I would have added as much more. Why have you despised the word of the Lord to do what is evil in his sight? You have struck down Judea the Hittite with the sword, and have taken his wife to be your wife, and have killed him with the sword of the Ammonites. Okay. Now therefore the sword shall never depart from your house, for you have despised me, and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. Thus says the Lord, I will rise up trouble against you from within your own house, and I will take your wives before your eyes and give them to your neighbor. And he shall lie with your wives in the sight of this very sun. For you did it secretly, and I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. David said to Nathan, I've sinned against the Lord. Nathan said to David, now the Lord has put away your sin, you shall not die. Nevertheless, because by this deed you have utterly scorned the Lord, the child that is born to you shall die. And then Nathan went to his house.
Want me to go on?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm looking at this now and I'm wondering, is this an example of the sins of the father being visited upon the son and subsequent generations?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and Nathan departed, is that where we are?
Yeah.
15,
Yeah.
yeah. And Nathan departed, this is the King James version.
Oh,
sure.
And Nathan departed unto his house, and the Lord struck the child that Uriah's wife bare unto David, and it was very sick. David therefore besought God for the child, and David fasted and went in and lay all night upon the earth. And the elders of his house arose and went to him to raise him up from the earth, but he would not, neither did he eat bread with them. And it came to pass on the seventh day that the child died. And the servants of David feared to tell him that the child was dead, for they said, behold, while the child was yet alive, we spake unto him, and he would not hearken unto our voice. How will he then vex himself if we tell him that the child is dead? But when David saw that his servants whispered, David perceived that the child was dead. Therefore David said unto his servants, is the child dead? And they said, he is dead.
Anyone else? If not, go ahead.
David then rose from the ground, bathed and anointed himself, and put on fresh clothes. He entered the house of the Lord and prostrated himself there. Afterwards, he returned home. He ordered food to be brought, and when it was set before him, ate it. His servants asked him, what is this? While the boy lived, he fasted and wept for him. But now that he is dead, he rises and eats. While the boy was still alive, he answered, I fasted and wept, thinking, it may be that the Lord will be gracious to me, and the boy will live. But now that he is dead, why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? I shall go to him. He will not come back to me. David consoled Bathsheba, his wife. He went to her and had intercourse with her, and she gave birth to a son and called him Solomon. And because the Lord loved him, he sent word, Nathan, the prophet, that the Lord said he should be given the name of Jedediah.
Seems that if you kill one giant, Goliath, you can be forgiven a hell of a lot. I just don't see how David comes out of anything other than despicable instead.
Yeah.
And yet there he is, in the line. And not despised over the millennia that ensued. In fact, if you ask most people, they would think that David was a great guy. A hero of ancient Israel. And he could be considered a hero of ancient Israel. And out on the battlefield where he said to fight, expanded the kingdom, but morally he was not a good person, it seems to me. Okay, I think that brings to the end of the story of David and Bathsheba. Folks, I don't have anything else to suggest. I really apologize for having clearly not planned this well enough.
Well, I think we'll take some of the responsibility.
Well, why should we? There's no ground for
That's
me
just
to-
the way we are, right?
Well, hey, how should we have gotten on Scott's list?
Pardon?
How should we have gotten on Scott's list?
That was a rum list, a rum, you signed up in rum, right?
No, it didn't.
Yes, that's why.
Oh, okay, got it.
Have you been
What
getting
was the
his-
question? What was your question?
I haven't been getting the,
If you didn't
Oh, the
register
email.
for the class officially, that's
oh,
probably
that's
why.
why,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, okay.
Next time.
Okay, unfortunately, this is the last time.
Sure.
Okay, I have a couple of questions
Great.
Good,
about this.
yes, that's good.
I mean, first of all, it does seem like he repented and realized how evil he had been.
Does it seem like that to you?
Yeah, because, yeah, he said, I have been evil and then he
What verse is it?
went and okay, where are we? Let's see, for thou didst see, and now we have a, behold, I will raise up evil against thee out of thy, for thou didst, and David said unto Nathan, this is chapter 12, verse 13. And David said unto Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said unto David, the Lord also hath put away thy sin, thou shalt not die.
So that was like he was forgiven.
Yeah, I was born unto thee, shall surely die. And you know, and then the Lord punished him by having the child die. but, I mean, it seemed to me that, and then he mourned his son. The
Did
dead son.
Doesn't seem like he mourned though.
Yeah, why
It
not?
seemed like he went through the motions of repenting, even though, because he knew his son was gonna die anyway. So
Yeah.
he looked like he was anticipating the death and hoping that it wouldn't happen. But then once it happened, he's like, oh, we're good.
Yeah,
I'm gonna eat, I'm gonna do everything
Yeah.
like.
Oh, yeah, that one,
Man.
that sounded kind of.
Yeah, it sounded as if he's over it.
yeah, it was
It didn't sound like
transactional,
grief.
Yeah,
purely transactional.
Yeah, it was almost manipulative, his
Yeah.
repentance.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
interesting how
true.
like when we're reading this now, like. As a group, you get to see like. The different interpretations of what was happening, because I feel like if I had read this at a different time in my life, I may have seen something different in it.
I think we all did.
Yeah,
when we read it years ago.
I never read it before, so.
I've read a little bit here and there, but also. With a maybe a skewed view of it from whoever was kind of interpreting it with me.
Mhm.
And I feel like you kind of get out of it what you want to get out of it. In a sense. So like now,
Hi guys, we're locked outside. Could somebody let us in, please?
Hey, they joined the Zoom. Hey guys. That was really
Thank
cool.
you. Thanks.
That's so here.
They love it.
Oh, there she is.
Why they went out, but they went out.
They found the Zoom link, you logged in, it's like,
If I would go.
I would not. You know, they're young.
Yeah, there you go.
But I just feel like
They rely on.
this
Zoom.
whole thing, like the Bible, like the religious right, giving, their interpretation of what's Christian and what's right. I feel like you can kind of take out of it what you want. You can see things the way you want to
Yeah.
see it. Just like as we were reading like some of the earlier verses and we start breaking down, well, did they specifically say man or did they specifically say woman? Did you infer that? Could it have been, male or female or gender specific, or maybe it wasn't, maybe it was just human. So I feel like people are reading the Bible and they literally, depending on where they are in their life and what their perspective is and what their maybe even agenda is, they come out with their own interpretation to fit their narrative. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely true. And one way of looking at that is that maybe that's precisely why the Bible and other books that continue to demand attention from human beings over very long periods of time. Maybe that's why they're able to do that. Maybe that's why they have that power, because they can be interpreted in different ways. Virtually anything can be interpreted in many ways. But when you have a book that is this long and this far back from current time, the range of interpretations can be enormous.
Right. And there's so many different versions, like the version that he's reading was
That's right.
very different than my version. It was almost so different that it was hard to follow what he was reading. So, there's so many different versions of the Bible out there from different perspectives.
There are many things that different people will find that they read because it can be so broadly interpreted. It's open.
Well, it's interesting, one of the reasons, my father was Unitarian, my mother was not. And one of the reasons my father was a Unitarian was because of Thoreau, the Transcendental Movement, which basically said, feel it. You gotta feel it, because the mind is not enough. And I think that's why I stay Unitarian, because I read this and it didn't mean very much to me, when I read it when I was younger. And that's why I've always trusted my instincts. Of course, we're talking to other people and reading. But this has actually helped me solidify my position as a Unitarian.
Yes.
I don't understand it. Well, this could go this way or that way, but I know where I'm at.
Yeah. what is the version that you're reading?
This is what Scott suggested, the New Interpreter's Study Bible.
Yeah,
I just like it. Do you use this one too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I have this one here, New Revised. Version,
That's a recent.
yeah.
Well, Scott was using it. I do trust him.
Yeah, what is that one?
This one here is New Revised, I believe.
Oh, the revised one.
New Revised, I got, sometimes says the right uses, to either one of these to use. It's
Yeah.
just- This one I
the
found,
King James
he
version.
said very careful King James,
It's-
says careful with that
It's
one.
very pretty. It's.
Yep. That's exactly
You
what
know, it's
Scott
written
just said.
more poetically, but I haven't found anything in it that really conflicts with any of the other readings.
Then you don't know quite where to look. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, maybe,
Haven't
but
gotten there yet.
that
some of
For,
them.
for instance, this King James is the Bible that we use for almost 400 years. It is so inculcated into our language that it's hard to get past it. But given what was going on politically in King James' time, he was extremely anti-witch. And there is a passage that everyone knows is thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. The Hebrew says thou shalt not suffer a poisoner to live. I don't know anybody that wants to live next door to a poisoner. Do you?
No. No, they make witches look evil.
He deliberately changed it because the person that was trying to get him dead was his cousin who was next in line for the throne if he died without a child.
Yeah.
And that man happened to be the head witch of Scotland. So he was very anti-witch. And that's just one of a dozen or more that I can rattle off. The least innocuous of them being that Moses had horns rather than a halo, which was just a bad translation because somebody changed the vowel.
Then a thing the first thing that popped out of me when I read this earlier in the evening, was the oddity. Just seemed odd because, so David, saw this beautiful woman up on the roof and made love with her. And then she went home. And then time must have gone by because she reported that she was with child. And she was living with her husband.
No,
So,
her husband
you
was
know,
away
how-
at war.
So how would she know that it was David's child?
Because her husband wasn't at home with her. Her
What?
husband was away at war. He couldn't have been the father.
Actually,
No,
biologically, if he, unless David waited 2 weeks, it wouldn't have been his child anyway.
To me, it sounded like because it took some time for her to communicate with David that she was with child, and then David sent for the husband. So
yes,
the husband was with his wife until
No.
that point.
he wouldn't go home to her. David said.
That
David
was
told,
after, but that was the way I read it, that after David sent for him.
yes,
So until David had heard from Bathsheba, is that her name?
yes.
The husband, as far as we know, was with his wife.
No, he was away at war.
Oh, and this.
Yeah. Did everybody?
How do you know that?
I feel like it was kind of implied.
I don't
I don't know that it's specific.
Dave, you had a very good explanation. I just can't remember exactly what you said.
And I can't remember the.
Well,
verse.
he's being called back from war, so obviously he was there.
Yeah, right, that's a good point, David had Uriah come back from the battlefield. um, Because he wanted to send Uriah home, so that
Right.
Uriah would have relationships with his wife, Bathsheba. And that could be taken as the source of the pregnancy. And
Okay, I
Uriah
have
wouldn't
to
go
read it
home.
again then.
Right, so the implication is that Uriah was already away from home.
That's right,
When David discovered Bathsheba and slept with her.
that's right,
And she clearly wasn't pregnant because she had just been bathing to cleanse
Yes.
from her period.
right,
So you're assuming that about a month has passed. Because now she announces to him that she's pregnant. And she's only gonna say that because she's missed her next period.
right.
So about a month has gone by since
Yeah,
they
at
slept
least.
together.
Mhm.
And so this whole time her husband is away on the battlefield
Oh, so the
somewhere.
husband was away all the time.
That's
Yes.
what it,
He never came back.
that's the implication here.
Until David
Yeah.
summoned him back.
When was that? In term-
After he
was-
slept with her, he summoned.
Oh,
her.
right, okay,
After
okay.
David knew that she was
Right.
pregnant,
Okay.
So about a
Alright,
month
alright.
after,
So that makes sense then.
yeah,
yeah,
Oh.
doesn't say the exact timeline, but you have to assume it's about a month.
Right, right. So there's a month
Yeah,
of play.
so he brings him back and says, and hopes he goes home. And like that he would have sex with his wife, so he doesn't get blamed for impregnating her. Or she doesn't claim that it's his, because now she won't be sure.
what would have happened if he had
I
gone?
guess she would be sure, she knows.
How would,
She knows she's pregnant.
I wonder how Bathsheba would have reacted if Uriah did come home.
I still don't see where he was there.
Yeah, maybe she didn't want Uriah,
Maybe she didn't.
because then why would she mention to David that she's pregnant?
Interesting.
She says it to him in hopes that maybe he's gonna be with her. Why else would she say it?
Whoever either
'Cause they
wrote,
weren't really, it implies they weren't really in a relationship if he's calling for her husband to come back.
right, they weren't, he was, the husband Uriah was off fighting David's war.
Right.
Oh, well,
Very German.
give you a recommendation of a Bible. This is the Jewish Study Bible, which has a unique translation. It's not the Revised Standard Version, the New Revised Standard Version. This is the Tanakh translation. And it's the Jewish Publication Society's translation. And I find it terrific. It's only the Hebrew Bible, which makes sense since it's the Jewish Study Bible put out by the Jewish Publication Society. But I find the translation both retains some element of the poetic that you would find in the King James Version, but reads more clearly. And it has extraordinary side notes and footnotes that explain things so well. It's clearly, it makes the Bible more comprehensible than I have read in any other Bible. It's a terrific publication. And they also have some great scholarly articles at the back, quite a few of them actually. I recommend this one very highly.
One other thing I'm kind of came to mind. So like, we're approaching this from a more scholarly aspect and just kind of interpreting it and analyzing it. I would guess from my own experience, a lot of people who are reading the Bible or making reference to the Bible, they're reading it as this is what we should do. They're not reading it in terms of maybe it's wrong, maybe it's biased, maybe it can be left up to your interpretation. So like growing up, going to church, I remember the minister would be, doing a sermon and then he would be quoting, chapter and verse, and everyone in the church is pretending or actually going to the verse, and he's spouting out whatever verse is supporting his sermon. And no one's questioning if this is accurate or true. We're all assuming that this is it's in the Bible, so if this is how we're supposed to believe, or this is what we're supposed to do. So I wouldn't be surprised, and that was my experience, but that could be the experience in many other congregations throughout the world, throughout the country, where, the minister is saying, hey, this chapter and verse says this is what we believe, this is what we're doing. And everyone, you're supposed to follow suit.
Yeah.
I grew up, you didn't say, oh, that's not really what they meant.
What sect did you grow up in?
Well, I grew up, my grandmother was a Baptist. And then I went to church with her as a young child. And then in my, I guess, tween to teenage years, I went to church with my aunt and uncle, who were, I guess, what you would call some level of conservative. They call themselves Christians. They're members of the Church of Christ. And so they literally call themselves Christians. And so the minister, and that's where I have most of my vivid memories of the Bible and church and all that. And I just remember the minister would have a sermon, he'd have a, what point he's trying to get across to the congregation. And then throughout the sermon, he's quoting different chapters and verses in the Bible, and people are paging through them, and he's reading, maybe 2 verses, and then he continues the sermon and goes to the next part of the sermon, but each verse is supporting what he's saying should be done, or how you should behave, or what you should believe. And so he could have been quoting the King James version. I don't know which version, but the point I'm making is that oftentimes people are in church, they're just following their leader. And they're not questioning if he's correct. Like, it's not like here we question things. And I feel like in churches I've grown up in and been to, you don't question the minister. Like, what they're saying is literally the gospel.
Wow.
And
So
that's what we believe.
I grew up in a Catholic household. I'm one of 8 kids, and I will tell you that my mother was the most devout Catholic. Mass every day. Just, I could give you 100 examples of how Catholic she was. And it was, not only her religion, but it was, her therapy. And she, it just, just 8 kids, not a lot of money, a lot of, and this was, he came of age in the 60s and 70s, and so you can imagine what we were doing to press her buttons.
Right.
And all of us left the church in our teen years because we were questioning, and we were not believing. And my brother Michael came out, as a gay guy, and that was my parents did a great job of loving him through that. But my mother could not tell anyone in her circle because she was so fearful. Yes, or just of them not accepting it. And it was sad, because my mother clearly loved him. And I think later in life, she then saw that, that even she had this girlfriend, Shirley had 9 kids, and Shirley didn't drive. And so my mother, they went grocery shopping together, and she never told Shirley. And when my mother died, my brother Michael stood up at the wake. He's the gay brother, and he stood up in the wake and talked about being gay. And we were all it was interesting. And Shirley was there.
Wow. Wow.
but, you know,
Was it
it's
accepted?
just, what's that?
Was he accepted?
He, you know, I think if no one threw stones at him. But I think Shirley was sad that,
Oh,
you know, like, I think she was sad that my mom misjudged her.
Didn't share that.
Yeah, didn't share that with her. But, you know, how we're just saying that, you know, people change over the course of time. And, you know, unfortunately, my mother had Alzheimer's very early in her life. And I think had that not interrupted her life, she probably would have been, you know, just come out more about her son. But anyway, yeah.
You know, just something from a biological point of view is that in modern science, we kind of know that the range of pregnancy is about 16 days from in general. I think back then they didn't have that specificity.
Right.
So a month could go by and they still get away with it.
And, you know, I mean, also, the period's not regular. I mean, there's plenty of women
Yeah.
that it's not
Yeah,
28 days,
Yeah.
that's.
but they know after, it's been about 2 months, like, probably pregnant. They knew enough.
The other thing is that I never understood why there was such animosity towards gay. I actually very heterosexual, too much, but I could never figure it out. And in this meeting today, and thinking about it, I think what it is that I think for us heterosexual, it's so hard to understand because our feelings are not that way. And it could be just that. It's like, how can that be if I've never felt that way? Yeah, not until like,
I think people are afraid of the unknown
Yeah.
sometimes.
yeah, I know.
May I ask a question? Who's a
Sure.
parent? Who's a parent?
I am,
Yes.
I got 3,
Multiple kids.
yep,
Just one.
There were times, I'm sure, when you didn't like any of your kids, or all of them, but you love them.
Oh, yeah.
It's the same way. It's the same way on a sexual basis. You
And-
love who you love because you're attracted to who you love, not because they're a particular color or sex or gender or of attractiveness. You just love who you love. So it really isn't that much harder to understand if you look at it from a non-church perspective. If you look at it just as this is another human being that I'm capable of loving, whether it's sexually or as a brother or as a friend or just because he's another human being.
very good point.
Thank you.
And there's briefly mentioned, I think the last session, the English language doesn't have, tries to draw too much out of one word, the word love. And there's so many different kinds of love. We should have different words for each kind. What do you think?
It would certainly help.
I apologize for clearly not having planned well enough.
No,
But you guys took up the slack really well. Thank you.
No, we ended well. You started extremely scholarly and to the point.
Yeah.
Granular and legalistic. It was terrific. And then we took it into the common realm after. So David worked out well.
Yes.
Good, thanks.
Right,
Okay.
well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for leaving.
Well, it was a pleasure in spite of my poor plans.
I thought you were